Hello everyone and welcome to my kitchen. Today I am going to be showing you how to make cake pops. Now there's a lot of different steps to this, a lot of different tricks that I've learned throughout making more cake pops than I can count. So let's get started. The first thing that you're going to start with is your cake. I'm using my chocolate cake recipe. It makes a big pan full. You can use a cake box mix for this. That's perfectly fine. You just want to make sure that you get one that will make enough. You also want to make sure that your cake is completely cool before you crumble it up. So I actually make this at least a day before I'm going to start my cake pop so that it has plenty of time to cool. And then what I do is I just take a clean kitchen towel and go ahead and flip it out onto that. You can also make it in whatever pan you have. I like to use these bigger ones. Of course it would come out easier if I did it while it's still hot, but I like to use these bigger ones because it then has less edges on it, so less places to get crispy. So I'm gonna take a serrated knife now, and I'm just feeling around the edges. The bottom of this is actually pretty good, I think. Okay, I'm just gonna carve off some of the edge here because anything that's crispy is going to be an unwanted texture. Going to be an unwanted texture in your cake pops. You want your cake pops to be smooth and uniform. So especially if you're making a cake that's like a yellow cake or a white cake, those tend to have a few more crispy bits, so just be mindful of that and getting all of that off.
Crispy bits.
Alright, now this cake that I make is a pretty moist cake, so it didn't have too many rough edges. So now we're going to crumble. So we're just going to take our cake and a big giant mixing bowl here and just rip off pieces of the cake and crumble it up. This is a fantastic job for any kids that you have because it's super fun to play with and it really needs to be crumbled. So our cake is all nice and crumbled. This is the cake that we just did, and this was one that I had done earlier. So now what we're going to do is add our frosting in. You don't need very much frosting. You need much less than you actually will feel like you need. So we're going to put just about 1/4 cup of frosting in here. You can also use whatever frosting flavor you want. You can use a pre-made frosting or make your own. So you have all the options in the world here. And all you're going to do at this point is just mush all of this together. What you're looking for, of course, you want to get that frosting that you just got in there incorporated throughout, but what you're looking for is essentially you need this to come together cohesively into a ball, and once it can do that, you're good. So you just need it to come together cohesively. So we're just going to mix all of this together to make sure that everything's good in here. You don't want to add too much frosting because if you do, it will end up making your cake pops greasy, and it will make it harder for the coating to stick on them properly without breaking or sweating or anything like that. So that's why you want to be so careful about the amount of frosting you're using. Of course, if you've mixed it in and you feel like it's still too dry, too crumbly, it's not giving you, enough of a stick together factor, then add in some more. Once you've got everything all mixed up, you're going to take and you're basically making a ball shape, so very similar to making a meatball. which is kind of silly. One thing that I have found, you see how that one's cracking there, it is really, really helpful if you give this a good hearty squeeze before you roll it up. That helps it come together cohesively. And you'll want to roll these for a normal size cake pop. You'll want to roll these about the size of a quarter. Any bigger than that, it's going to be ginormous. And the perfect cake pop should be no more than 2 bites, 1 to 2 bites, because otherwise it's just a little too much. So once you've got your quarter-sized cake bowl, you're just going to put it on a sheet pan. I promise you these sheet pans are actually clean. I just use them a lot, so that's why they look dirty. So I'm going to proceed to roll through all of these, and then we will move on to our next step. All right, guys, welcome back. So all of our cake balls are rolled up now. After you've got them rolled, you want to put them in the freezer for about 15 minutes. You don't really want to put them in the freezer for any longer than that, because then they'll get a little bit too hard. About 15 minutes is perfect. Now what I did with my coating, my chocolate coating here, this is the easiest and I think the most accessible way to melt your chocolate. So I have my crock pot just set to low. I've had this on for over an hour now, and just fill it up about a quarter of the way with water, and then take your chocolate coating that you're going to be using and put it into some mason jars. You want to make sure that you don't get any water in these or anything, so the chocolate won't seize up. Now it looks like it hasn't melted, but it actually has. You can just go in there and stir that, and it's really nice, and that will make the perfect coating for our cake pops. You just want to make sure that you give it a good stir to make sure that all of those melts are melted there and nice and smooth. And you can just add more chocolate in here. That's why I do 2 of whatever color I'm using, because when one of them goes down, I've used enough in that one, then I can just switch over to the other one, just put some more chocolate melts in here. So what we're going to do now is put the sticks into our cake pops. So you're going to dip your stick in your chocolate and then just push that down into your cake pop. And we're going to do this with all of them, and then we're going to put these in the freezer for another 5 minutes to let the stick harden in there, and then we'll get to dipping. So our cake pop sticks have been frozen in the freezer for 5 minutes. Now, what we're going to do now is dip them, of course. I love to use these floral foam blocks. So you can find these in a craft store near the fake flowers and things like that, because these you can just stick them right in there. You can reuse them and let them dry on here, so it's perfect. So I took one of my little mason jars of coating out of the crock pot, and once you dip it, you want to gently tap it on the side because this chocolate is going to drip off onto your stick if you don't get it tapped off. And there you go. Now if you're putting sprinkles on it or anything like that, you want to do that at this point before it dries. I'm not doing that this time, so I'm not going to be doing that. So for these ones, instead of like dipping them in sprinkles or anything like that, I'm actually just doing a little bit of the opposing color that I'm using today on the top. So all you do for that is just get a disposable piping bag, put a little bit of your chocolate in there, and then just go ahead and do it like that. And you can do it a little haphazardly if you want to, or you can be a little bit more controlled with it. But that is how we are finishing these ones off tonight. Alright guys, our cake pops are completely finished in their little baggies and they are ready to go. Now, let's have a small heart-to-heart on some things that could potentially go wrong with your chocolate. because there's usually some step of making a cake pop that goes slightly wrong. If you find that your chocolate is a little bit too thick, you can add some coconut oil in there and it will help to thin it out. So that is a really good thing to do. I actually just start putting a little bit of coconut oil in every chocolate that I melt, just for that purpose anyway. You don't need very much, like 1/4 teaspoon usually is enough, but that really helps. Do not ever let any water get close to your chocolate, because it will seize up. So be very careful that you don't get any water droplets in your chocolate as you're melting it, because it will seize up and then you can't use it. If you find that your chocolate is a little too thin and you feel like it should be a little bit thicker, because this does happen too, if your crock pot is on low, turn it to just warm and maybe go ahead and just take out the chocolate and just let it sit for a little bit. You can also pour in a little bit more of the chocolate wafers, and just that will automatically bring down the temperature of it, so that will help. So those are a couple tips for you on the chocolate. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Any questions that you have about your cake pops, leave them down below for me, and have an awesome night.